Hello and welcome to the Health Law LL.M Student Experience Virtual Information Session. My name is Andres Constantine and I will be your moderator for this session. We're very excited to have you join us today to learn more about the Health Law LL.M program at Georgetown University Law Center and hear from some of our current students. Again, feel free to type in the chat where you're joining us from today and your name. Before we begin, I want to share a 3-minute video that will provide a preview of our program and this conversation, and then we'll dive into our discussion. So just give me a second. I will share my screen. There we go.
We have world-class faculty at the O'Neill Institute. There's no institution in the world that even comes close to our level of expertise. We have people who are experts in health systems and the Affordable Care Act in the United States, leaders in addiction and dependency and pandemic preparedness, from HIV/AIDS to polio, monkeypox.
One of the best things about the Health Law LL.M program is the ability to work with colleagues at the O'Neill Institute. Myself, I have research assistants who are students coming on every year. There's fellowship opportunities, there's seminars and events. As a student coming to Georgetown's LL.M program, I think you could expect a lot of engagement, both from your professors and your peers.
Because of the international nature of the courses that Georgetown offers, there are students from all over the world, and I felt like I wanted to be part of that community.
You have faculty that are practicing with the DOJ, you have faculty that are practicing with the WTO.
For me, particularly different than other programs that maybe other schools had, it was the combination of the domestic courses with the international courses.
Students after the LL.M programs have a wide range of professional opportunities to practice global health law, but also to support those populations that have been historically disadvantaged in access to health.
I use the LL.M to really help to expand my understanding of the regulatory frameworks in different countries, to really understand what drives decision-making from a legal context for access to healthcare, access to medicines, and many of the drivers that affect our healthcare systems globally.
The knowledge I gather here is all geared towards making a change in society, making a change in the community, but having some level of impact on the life of people who are having difficulties realizing the right to health.
I think one of the biggest benefits of the health law program at Georgetown is the opportunities outside of the classroom. I think it's really important to the footsteps from the Capitol, footsteps from the White House, and footsteps from the Supreme Court, frankly.
Learning the law where the law is made is truly unique.
I work full-time, so this LL.M was a really unique opportunity to get learning in the classroom while also experiential learning at my job.
There's no other university that offers this type of academics and scholarship right in the heart of our nation's capital here in the United States.
We founded the O'Neill Institute to use world-class scholarship to really improve the health, the lives, the safety, the security of everyone in the world, and it's exceeded all of our expectations. It's our goal to train the next generation of leaders, to pass the baton to you, to lead, to make a difference in the world.
If you care at all about doing health policy work at the highest level, you should be at the best, which is undoubtedly Georgetown's LL.M program.
Okay. With that, now let's dive into our discussion. We have a panel of 4 current Health Law LL.M students with us today who will be sharing their experiences and insights on the program, the coursework here at Georgetown, and the faculty. Towards the end of this session, our panelists will be taking questions from the audience, so feel free to use the Q&A box that is at the bottom of the Zoom screen throughout our session to share your questions with us. So first, I would like to turn to you, Alan. Alan, could you tell us a bit about what inspired you to pursue a Health Law LL.M program, and why did you choose Georgetown Law for your studies? And in particular, if you have any advice that you would give to someone considering pursuing an LL.M in health law at Georgetown. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. So I will respond to the three questions. First of all, welcome everyone who's joining from across the world for this conversation. I think, why did I choose to do an LLM on health and law? I think I had spent a lot of time in legal practice, in working for a nonprofit, providing legal advice, legal advocacy for the right to health. And I felt it was time to add some credentials to the practice that I had on the field and on the ground on various health and human rights issues. And that's what triggered me to consider doing an LLM at, as I would say, a later stage of my career. And the reason why Georgetown seemed to be attractive was because I had worked with them as a partner on aspects relating to tobacco issues relating to TB and human rights. And we were well connected with some of the members of the O'Neill Institute. So I was very familiar with the kind of work they did. We were on the same wavelength in terms of human rights, rights-based approaches, being real to the communities on the ground. And so it naturally connected that Georgetown was one of the many schools I considered for that reason, but also its proximity to decision makers in Washington, DC, in the Senate, the World Bank, UNAIDS, all key players on US policies. PEPFAR, because we work a lot on HIV, are based in DC, and so that provides some level of proximity in terms of decision makers, but also where decisions are made. The Supreme Court is here in DC. We get to hear some of the decisions firsthand where possible. So again, that location, that convenience was favorable for me. And I would want to say, my advice to anyone on the call is that you can do the LLM at any part of your career. It depends on where it fits best. It could start immediately after law school. It could be somewhere in between, or it could also be at the tail end to sort of use your experience to connect it to the theory and expand your academic knowledge. So the advice for me is you can start at any time, but for purposes of this call, applying now would be the first and most important step to do to begin this journey. But it's a course that is open to all spectrums of people with different levels of work experience, academic knowledge, and regional diversity is quite rich, which I believe we shall talk about later. Back to you, Andy.
Thank you very much, Alan. Now I want to turn to you, Eva. Could you share with us how has your LLM experience been as a student here at Georgetown? What are some of the highlights of your experience thus far? And where you can speak to any extracurricular activities or events that would have enhanced your Health Law LL.M experience here at Georgetown.
Thank you so much, Professor Constantine. Hi, everyone. Hi, Gabby. Hi, Luis. Hi, Alan. Hi, everyone on the call. Thank you so much for having me here as a panelist. I think I would start by saying that when I came to Georgetown, I didn't come with a lot of, I didn't have an idea of what my life is going to be like here. I was scared about a lot of things like moving to another country. It can be isolating, studying in a different education system. And there were a lot of apprehensions on that end. But when I came here, I was just surprised every day with the amount of things that the university had to offer. I remember one of our professors in the first class told us that Georgetown is like a buffet and you can pick what you want, what is best for you. And there is so much to do here, and not just in terms of your coursework or co-curricular activities, but also just generally, if there's anything you're interested in, you'll find someone or something that will help you work on that interest. For me, in terms of coursework, I'll just quickly say that I was an IP lawyer back in India, and I came here with an idea that I'll just take up courses which are relevant to my experience and will help me build on my experience. But that is definitely not what happened. There was so much that O'Neill had to offer here, and there were so many courses. So I took a lot of courses which I had like no context or idea about before, that I got to learn about here. Like I took a course on industry epidemics, on tobacco control, and stuff like legality of sugar, and like junk food, and like that was like a very interesting course I took. I also took a practicum course on health and human rights, and so I, instead of just like having a very narrow insular approach, I was able to diversify, which was great. The second thing which really was like a huge takeaway for me was the very collaborative culture of the cohort, and the approach of professors. Like this one very small assignment in class that we have, which was like one of the best lectures, and like which really was like a huge like a great experience for me, was this class in industry epidemics, where like all the students shared their papers with each other, and we all read each other's papers, and we gave feedback on each other's papers, and which was like a very collaborative and like a very discussion and dialogue based approach to like developing your papers and understanding the coursework, which was great. And like generally also, because I have the privilege of staying on campus, so I'm kind of exposed to a lot of things on campus. Like if I just step out of the dorm, there's always something going on. O'Neill has a bunch of like events going on all the time on different issues. They get experts, and they get people from the field who come and speak to us. It's a great platform and a great place to just meet people, which was amazing. I was so fortunate to meet Dr. T twice in the last 1 year, who is the special rapporteur to Right to Health at the UN, and my personal rock star, which was, and I didn't faint, which was great. So that way this year has been so fulfilling. And in terms of co-curricular activities, there's again so much to do. Like I like running, so I'm part of this running club at Georgetown. I like gardening, so I'm part of a gardening club in Georgetown, because I'm interested in intellectual property. So there's a student intellectual property club. You can be a part of that. And in general, like if there's anything you're interested, if you like dancing, if you like music, if you like poetry, there's always going to be people who are interested in the same thing. You'll always have a platform to work on those interests also. So yeah, I really feel if you come to Georgetown, you're not just a student here. You get to like be this entire person, and you get to like work on everything that you are, and you meet people, you learn new things, and which is why I feel in many ways, not just in terms of like my coursework, but in terms of my interests, and like in terms of the people I met, this has been a very fulfilling and rewarding year.
Thank you. Great insights. Thank you for sharing that. I always get questions about kind of what else do students do in addition to studying, right? And I think Georgetown, as you highlighted, provides a lot of opportunities for student engagement, student experiences, and activities, right? I always tell people the LLM program is not just an academic experience or a professional experience. It's also a cultural experience, a social experience. So I'm glad that you were able to share more about that. So all of you are in the last week of classes, and you're about to graduate very, very soon. So Luis, I want to turn to you. And what have you learned about the intersection of health law and policy through your classes and experiences here at Georgetown? And also in terms of faculty, how have you found the faculty at Georgetown and the O'Neill Institute to be in terms of support and mentorship?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Constantine, for that question, and thank you for inviting me to this wonderful panel today. So like Eva just mentioned, I am really impressed with the diversity of courses that the LLM at Georgetown Law offers. So my main interest coming into the program was to focus on the issue of pandemic preparedness and response. And there are plenty of opportunities throughout the LLM to learn about pandemic governance and the law. And so one of the courses that I took last semester with Professor Larry Gostin and Professor Alexander Finch focused specifically on pandemics. So this is an entire semester, an entire course dedicated to discussions about pandemic governance and the law. And I think that, there are very few law schools in the world, if any, that can offer a course like that, only about, pandemic preparedness and response. Another similar example like that is the course about global health security with Professor Sam Halabi, where it is broader than just pandemics, but pandemics are a very important element of that course. And so there are several other courses that I was able to take throughout this year in the program that are not specifically about pandemics, but where students can learn concepts that are, applied to disease outbreaks and to health crises like pandemics. So one of them was communicating global health law, where students can learn skills to communicate complex health and policy issues to a relatively broad audience. And you lawyers that have that type of skills that can communicate complex, scientific and technical issues, in health crisis can have an advantage over their peers working in this space. Another example like that is a course taught by Professor Kevin Clark, which is specifically about public-private partnerships, a new form of governing a number of global health issues, including pandemics. And so throughout the course, what we learn is how to be a translator between different stakeholders that have different perspectives, and the lawyer is at the middle, sort of like at the center of all of this, kind of like an engineer of those, different, or, like a broker of those different perspectives, and an engineer of vehicles, legal vehicles like public-private partnership to govern those interests and those stakeholders. And of course, one of the main challenges of pandemics, we saw that during the COVID-19 pandemic, is how to ensure equitable access to medical countermeasures. And there are several courses Eva mentioned about intellectual property, where we learned that one of them is taught by Professor Watau, for example. But the offer in the program goes way beyond just pandemics. There are courses about sexual and reproductive health, regulation of pharmaceutical products, biotechnology and the law, bioethics, and more. So I'm really, really impressed by, the richness and the diversity of all the courses that are offered in the LLM program. And so with regards to support and mentorship, in my experience, the O'Neill Institute community has been extremely supportive. And every faculty that I have encountered at Georgetown Law has been more than willing to mentor me throughout this year. And I think that the LLM program is very intentional about this. The O'Neill Institute has created specific programs to ensure that we are fulfilling our academic and professional goals, and to guide us throughout that process. And I do want to put you on the spot, Andy, because you have been one of those mentors to me that have been incredibly supportive throughout this process. And I think I can mention one example about how supportive this community is, and it's last year at the beginning of the fall semester, I took a course with Professor Gosting and Professor Jeff Crowley. And when Professor Crowley introduced himself in that course, at the beginning of the course, he mentioned a trajectory that he followed, a professional trajectory that included working in civil society, then in the government, and now in the academic setting that he currently is at the O'Neill Institute. And so that is a professional trajectory that is very similar to one that I want to follow. I have experience in civil society, and I now want to work, either in government or academia. And so I reached out to Professor Crowley and I asked him whether it was possible to talk to him to learn about how I can transition from one setting to the other, and how my skills from one space can be used to inform my work in a separate setting. And so he offered me to talk to me the next day And we spend like an hour talking about career path and how to use my skills from civil society, potentially in the government or in academia. And for those of you that don't know Professor Crowley, he used to be, President Barack Obama chief advisor on HIV policy, right? So we have the privilege in this community of having permanent access to people like him, people that have done a lot in their careers that are still doing a lot of incredible things. And we have the privilege to talk to them on pretty much on a daily basis and to learn about, them and to try to follow similar pathways. And I think that's very unique to Georgetown Law, in part because we are located in Washington, D.C., but also because of this incredible community that the O'Neill Institute is. Back to you, Andy.
Thank you, Luis. Yes, as you mentioned, we offer a lot of health specialization, health-related courses. Actually, at Georgetown, we have over 45 specialization courses in health, so you can pick whatever fits your interest. We also have a mentorship program where we match current students with graduates from our program or experts working in the field according to the interests of the current students. So it's a good opportunity for our students to get some guidance and support from recent graduates or experts in the field. And we put a lot of, as you mentioned, Luis, we put a lot of emphasis on the networking component, on the post-graduation employment opportunities as well. I'm curious, we covered coursework, we covered activities and events, and I'm curious to hear from Gabriela about the kind of career opportunities that have opened up for you as a result of your LLM studies. How has Georgetown Law and the Health Law LL.M program prepared you for these opportunities? And how has Georgetown Law's and the O'Neill Institute's network of alumni and connections helped you in your academic and professional pursuits? So over to you, Gabriela.
Thank you, Andy. And again, reiterating what the other panelists were saying, thank you for being here and thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak to you all today on this, because I know as somebody who applied to the program, this session was very important in my decision making. In terms of career opportunities, I was one of the people who, we have a couple in our program that graduated law school and went directly to do the LLM program. So my career opportunities were interesting in the sense that I had my experiences were in terms of internships and clerkships, but I hadn't really had any post-bar experience. So the LLM was instrumental to me in the sense that it opened up opportunities in the health law realm specifically, because I was very cognizant that I did not, a lot of attorneys, especially newer ones, start off, they may start off at a firm doing some work that may not be the work they want to do. And I knew from the very beginning that I really wanted to focus my efforts, my studies, like the reason I went to law school, the reason I went to Georgetown on health law. I didn't specifically know which area of health law, but I did know I wanted to be in that area. So the LLM really opened the door for me to present myself to employers as I'm not going to come in as this general associate doing all sorts of work. I really want to come in as somebody with specific knowledge about regulatory stuff that are happening in the US with this background knowledge. So it's opened up a lot of opportunities in that realm. I've interviewed at places that, without the LLM and without this health law context, I don't even think I would have been, given the opportunity to interview, much less, to have the qualifications for it. So it's been really instrumental in giving me those opportunities to actually, apply to these places. I've, in the past 8 months, have had a lot of opportunities that I don't think I would have gotten just straight out of law school with the little experience that I had. So it's been instrumental for me. So for anybody here who's, recent in their legal career or just graduating law school or about to graduate, I wouldn't leave the LLM, as I would still consider the LLM as an option, even if you don't have that, like how Alan was saying, it could be in the beginning, it could be in the middle. And for me, it's been really, helpful to my career. In terms of how the program has prepared me for these opportunities, So I graduated from a law school in Florida that had a lot of health law courses, which a lot of law schools in the US have. But the thing that program was missing was this intersection between international components of health law, which are huge in the health law space, and the domestic components of the US. There was a lot of courses about compliance, a lot of courses, about basic bioethics principles and things that are very useful, but I didn't have the connection between the regulatory space here and the international space, which are two areas that I was very interested in. So different from the other programs that are out there, Georgetown was very specific. And even though the LLM is in national and global health, I, as a domestic US student with the intention to stay in the US, was able to take an array of courses on FDA law, on healthcare fraud and abuse, on, I also took the industry epidemics course, but I wrote my paper on the US perspective, and I wrote the paper on the First Amendment, actually. So you can really cater your experience to wherever you want to be. So for those US domestic students, I would not let the fact that the LLM is partially international and global based to deter you from doing it. Like, you can cater it to the specific areas of domestic or global law that you want. And I think just, obviously being part of the program also makes you part of the alumni, the networking connections, the professor connections. I was able to intern for the Office of Global Affairs through a speed networking event that we had, where I just showed my resume to the current head, Mara Burr, and she reached out to me, and I was able to intern with them and go virtually to the WHO meetings and take notes. And it was an experience that, had I not been at Georgetown at that speed with networking and spoken to her, I would have never even gotten to experience that area of international regulation and international, policy making that was happening, with essentially every country in the world being at the seat at that table. And it's an incredible opportunity. So, being able to connect with people in similar circumstances to me. I actually, a couple of weeks ago, met with a student, an alumni who was from Florida, was from Miami, went to law school in Florida, and then came here to do the program and was now working in FDA law and regulatory. And it was surprising to me that I found somebody with a very similar background, but then again, not so surprising because of the reach that the program has and, all the things that it has to offer, is that I'm sure you're going to find someone either in your shoes or 5 years where you want to be, who's more than willing to, speak with you and give you advice and help in anything that you may need. So it's been really instrumental, the connections that I've made, and they've all tied back to the opportunities I've been offered. I'm currently going to start now in June. I leave back home to Florida to start working at a firm that specializes in provider and payer disputes. And I think without the LLM, I don't even think that opportunity would have came up the way that it did, where I was able to clerk for them and then slowly transition into full-time work. So yeah, it's been really, really helpful for my career. And if I could go back a year ago and think about doing it again, I would not hesitate in coming to the program.
Thank you, Gabriela, for sharing that. So this will be my last question. I see we have a couple of questions in the Q&A, so feel free to continue sharing your questions there. And I want to allocate some time to answer those questions. So again, this will be my last question to you, the panelists. So building on your answers, I'd like to ask all of you, as students from different countries and regions, how has the program ultimately helped you understand the differences and similarities in health law and policies across different regions? We talk about this program being global, but also national, and being able to take those comparative experiences from different countries or lessons learned and apply them to your countries. So I just want to learn more about how the program helped you understand those differences and similarities. So let's start with Alan. Alan, I want to bring you back to the conversation. I know you participated already at the beginning.
I'd say a lot, but that's not a wise answer for a lawyer. Let me be more serious. I think, let me start with the US. It was shocking to really discover the extent of how the health system in the US is controlled by the insurance sector through the classes we did in the Global Health Law class around how the US health system is structured. And to some extent, it made me appreciate the health system back at home much better, because there are things I could easily access at home for a cheaper cost than I would be able to do here. And that sort of worried me in the sense that when you have a country that has a fairly good economy, but access to health is a challenge, again, it goes to the point that it's not just how much money a country has, but it also depends on how the health system is governed. So I think for me, that was the first lesson I learned. That was a surprise. I knew the health system here was controlled a lot by the insurance companies, but I didn't appreciate the depth and scope and how difficult it is now to get out of it in the current situation that we are. I think I could resonate with the examples that were shared from colleagues in other countries from the global south around healthcare worker challenges in terms of pay, in terms of work quality. I think some of those resonated with what we are facing at home. But I think with the resonation came with what do we then do? What are the strategies to be able to try and address this using the law? And that's what many of our papers, many of our discussions in class, many of our conversations in social events revolved around that. Yes, we know there's a problem, but now what are we able to do about it, either in your individual capacity, as a collective group of people? And I think that's the joy of being at Georgetown, is that you have real conversations of real things happening in the world, and you trying to see how do you fit into that conversation and how does it translate for you at home. I think the last thing I'd say is a class I'm currently taking on assisted reproductive technology with Gabriela, where I'm the only man in a class full of quite a number of women. But the reason why I took the class is that Kenya is just at the verge of adopting a law on assisted reproductive technology. And having had the experiences in the US, Canada, the UK, Israel, Iran, and other areas, and even South Africa, it got me thinking, what can I be able to do the Kenyan context? And this will probably inform whatever submissions through the organization I work for, Kelly, that will make to Parliament around assisted reproductive technology. So they're real things. It's not just academic and theoretical things that we are doing, but they're actually things that eventually apply to the real life situations that one is dealing with or facing. So I think for me, that's what I would say. Andy, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. Ivan, do you want to share anything about this?
Yeah, I think I really, what Alan said really resonates with me, that when I came here, the one thing that I realized is that it doesn't matter if it's the global south, the global north, or the west or the east. Every health system and every legal system has its own shortcomings, and there's no perfect health system or legal system. And the idea of having so many people from all over the world together in one cohort or in one platform is to share your good and bad practices in any field and kind of build on them, or basically take some practices from good practices from other jurisdictions and work on making like a better system, better health system or legal system. And I think in terms of like my coursework, one of the projects I worked on for a practicum course was this deliverable for a client on a reproductive rights issue, where we worked on a survey of medical secrecy and reproductive rights and abortion rights in several jurisdictions across the world. We worked on a survey in about 14 countries, and it was this really long report that we prepared at the end of it. And that's when I realized like it's really, you can never really tell how perfect or not perfect a country system is. And when you look at the nuances, you realize how every country has good practices and bad practices. And we kind of made that survey to compare the practices and kind of assess how practices from one country can be transposed to another, and like how bad practices can be fixed. And I think the other thing that Alan said that I really agree with was that like I realized how things in the US itself can be very challenging in terms of like access to justice, or access to like many healthcares. We're living in very strange times right now in terms of reproductive rights in the US, and like in the Americas in general. And coming from a jurisdiction where abortion rights or reproductive rights are somewhat on point, I could kind of draw comparisons and basically think of solutions, or think of ways where we can kind of think of the laws differently in different jurisdictions and build on the laws. Other than that, I think just generally, not just in terms of coursework or law, but generally just meeting people from different jurisdictions, knowing about their culture, celebrating their festivals, just trying to learn their language. That alone has been a great experience, and that alone has helped me grow as a student, as a person. And just realizing that how common we have despite our differences in terms of language and culture was something that was super enlightening for me. And that is again one of the biggest takeaways for me from this LLM experience, just to make friends from all over the world, and to kind of connect with them and learn about their culture and share my experiences and my cultural upbringing with them, which was great. So
thank you, Eva. Luis?
Yeah, and I agree with Eva. So one of my favorite aspects of the program at Georgetown Law is how diverse this university is, and how diverse this community at the O'Neill Institute is. So all regions in the world are really well represented, both among the faculty, but also the students. And I think that largely had to do with the fact that we are in Washington, D.C., a beautiful city that attracts people from all over the world. And so we get to interact with a global community really on a daily basis. So the learning never stops, because we're constantly learning from each other about our differences, but also our similarities, right? And so with regards to maybe one specific thing, and I agree with Alan that there's a lot that can be said in this question, but one specific thing that I think it's important to highlight in my experience was a course about decolonizing global health law, taught by Dr. Ngozi, Dr. T, the UN Rapporteur on the Right to Health, and Dr. Andrew, which was really unlike anything that I have seen in any law school in my life. A truly honest discussion about the impact of colonization on global health and the law, and what can we do to dismantle those laws and those institutions that were built through process of colonization and neo-colonizing processes. And so one of the things that I learned in that class is that, colonization means something slightly different, or maybe significantly different, depending on the region, right? Because the language, land dispossession, issues related to race and identity, they all vary depending on the region. The impact of colonization was different in different regions with regard to those factors. But ultimately, all regions in the world can benefit and will have significant impact from decolonizing global health. So we have like differences in the way that the process happen, but the benefits and the need for decolonizing global health law and global health institutions look very similar to all regions in the world.
Thank you, Luis. Yes, that's a very, very important class that we launched this year with the Special Rapporteur on Right to Health and Dr. Ngozi and Andrew. So thank you for highlighting that. Gabriela, anything to add to that question?
I think, I think everybody has very, articulately, stated what I obviously very much agree with. I think the only thing I would add would be from the perspective of somebody who, is about to launch their career in this area. I think it's important to know, and as a domestic US representative, I think it's important to know what other countries are doing, because even if you want to dedicate your career to just US law, if you don't know what other countries are doing differently to better your own healthcare system, your own structures, your own policies, it's going to be very difficult to move forward in this country, given everything that's happening in, the recent years without that perspective. And it's not about copying other countries. It's not about suddenly becoming them. It's about listening and being intentional about listening and taking those experiences and seeing how we can apply it with the domestic framework that we do have. And if the framework doesn't work, how can you as a, future attorney, advocate, litigator can, fight to change those frameworks. So for me, it's important to just listen to other peers who have different views and experiences so we can see how we can apply that here or how we cannot apply that here. Maybe it's a criticism of their, their home system, and it's something that we should be wary about. So for me, those are the main differences. It's, the future of health here is dependent on how well we listen to others and what they're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much to all of you for sharing your experiences. We do have a couple of questions in the chat, in the Q&A box. There's one that I would particularly ask you, Gabriela, to answer, since you shared that you graduated law school and then you came to the program right after. The question relates to what sort of relevant experiences or activities you can do or would you recommend doing during your law school years to better prepare you to apply to the Health Law LL.M program. This is for students, of course, that wants to apply to the program straight out of law school without kind of formal full-time work experience.
Yeah, definitely. I was very heavily involved in anything health law related at my law school. So there was a health law society that I was a secretary and then vice president and then president. So I was tenured throughout my entire time there. I took every single health law course I could get my hands on. My school had an array of clinical experiences, particularly one in disability law and inclusion that I also partook in. So it's just seeing what opportunities are around you. It really depends. You could work with a judge that specializes in mental health or, in drug rehabilitation cases, those diversion cases where instead of sending someone to jail, they're going to send them to, rehabilitation so that they can get the help they need. There's a lot of angles that can be taken in health law, and the opportunities are most definitely out there. I interned with the CDC during my second year of law school. I interned with the Office of Inspector General doing healthcare fraud. It just really, and I'm not saying that this is a linear pathway that you need to do these things. I just think you need to be involved in some way. We have a classmate, Aaliyah, who during her time, she did opioid litigation when she was in law school and helped at a firm doing that. There's health law is really expansive. And as long as you try to find the opportunities around you and, you take advantage of them, I think that will be really helpful in showing Georgetown that, hey, I may not have the experience, but I have the will and the drive to be in this area because I've, tried to associate myself with all of these experiences that I can, though I think those things are important because like we've been saying, not everybody's career is linear. And just because I'm doing the LLM from the beginning doesn't mean it's a good or a bad thing. It's just the way I navigated my career path. So those are opportunities that I would heavily suggest that somebody involve themselves in as soon as they can to show their interest in the area.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. So there's another question that is more kind of practical in terms of applying to the program and whether our thoughts on financial preparation for the LL.M program. Just want to emphasize and highlight that we offer scholarships to our students. One thing that we take very seriously is promoting equity in access to education and to our program in particular. I know, I mean, I'm from Argentina. I know it's expensive to come and participate in one of these LL.M programs. So I want to emphasize that we offer scholarships for our prospective students, admitted students. So I'd be happy to share more about that. In a one-on-one meeting, we have information about it in our website as well. So just schedule a meeting with me. We can have a conversation about that. So to the panelists, any last comments, thoughts that you want to share before we conclude?
Sure. Thanks all for joining. I would encourage you to consider this program. I know we sounded a bit serious with the conversation, but there are fun things that happen. There are different social clubs, but particularly for the health law program, it's more like a family. We have colleagues from Asia, from America, the US, we have Africa, different parts of the world, Latin America, and the connection is really great. You get to have a different family here that is open towards learning on all aspects and also social events. You definitely enjoy from the speaking engagements and the free food that comes with the many speaking engagements. I particularly don't like to cook, so the speaking engagements are not only for academic nourishment, but they are also for nutritional nourishment. So it's a fun program to consider. And there's beyond the program, there's support. There's people who support you to work on your LinkedIn profile. There's people who support you to work on your CV. There's Andy who every week will send you job links to consider in the health sector. So it's not more just about getting a degree and walking away. It's investing in your networks around health law issues if you're truly interested in going in that direction. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Alan. Eva, Gabriela, Luis, anything to add?
Yeah, because there were conversations happening around like how to prepare and funding. And I just wanted to share that as someone who already had, like I was already working in a firm in Delhi and I already had a stable career. And for me also, it was difficult to prepare for funding, and that also took a lot of work. So there were times when I would think, should I really move halfway across the world and like pursue this degree? Would it really be worth it, given like so much that I have to leave back home and then so much I have to put in? And I would say I have not regretted this decision even for a second. Like it was one of the best decisions I've taken in terms of like my career, and everything figures itself out as far as challenges are concerned. And just coming here, the environment is so supportive, and there are so many people who are going to be there to help you out with things, mentor you, and just and not just like professors and Professor Constantine, not just like your mentors and like professionals and people working in the university, but also your peers. Like Alan has been one of the most like helpful, supportive peer we've had in the cohort, and that also like really makes a difference, which is why I would say this was like a very fun, fulfilling, rewarding year for me, and I'm very, very happy that I took this decision and I pivoted to academics.
Thank you. Gabi or Luis?
Well, briefly, I can say that, there has never been a more important time in history for health law and for global health in general, right? We're dealing with climate change, pandemics, attacks to our sexual and reproductive health, the opioid crisis, industry epidemics, and the list goes on. And so these challenges are significant, and lawyers can be and should be at the center of, shaping those policy discussions. And the good thing is that you can come here to this program, to Georgetown Law, to study, these issues and to get the training that you need to become a leader in this field and to help change the world in those issues. And I truly encourage people to participate and to come here and to do that.
Thank you very much, Gabby.
I would just like to reiterate, like what Luis said, we're in a very integral moment in, history in terms of health rights and preparedness and what we can do to move forward. As somebody from Florida, and I'm sure, if anybody's joining from other states that have similar, restrictions to, things like abortion and an array of things that are happening, I think it's important for attorneys in those states to go get the knowledge they need, because I know that the knowledge doesn't exist back home, not at this capacity, and go back and really cement themselves in their communities and do the work that needs to be done. Because it's really easy to go to DC and practice health law when everybody in the room is on the same page as you. It's really hard to, like someone like myself who in law school did a panel on health as a human right and got a lot of comments about how they disagreed. And it was just the space I was in. But I think it's important to do those things. And for those of you coming from other countries in similar circumstances, I think it's important for you to do that. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to us. And, we really hope that you guys consider coming to Georgetown.
Thank you, Gabby. I know that we have a couple of questions in the Q&A box that Alan, I think you like to answer some of those. So can you read them and answer it, please?
I think there's this question that just came in from Maria, asking, could we indicate, in our opinion, considering our fields of practice, the most interesting classes offered in the program? And second, any of the panelists took their family with them during the period of the LLM course? If yes, how's the experience? So I'll start with the last one. I have a family, but I did not bring them because it would disrupt their work and school, but they did come to visit. There are others on the panel who have a different aspect of family that I'll let them speak to it themselves. But generally, if you have kids, it's definitely an arrangement you want to consider in advance in terms of, do they have to be in school, out of school, who'll take care of them while you're there? And if it's just one partner, I'll leave Gabby to give that guidance. She's better placed to advise on that. In terms of, courses, it depends. For instance, for me, health, human rights was key. So global health law class was key. There's a whole class on health information and technology that was really important around how you use technology, information in the health sector. This biotechnology class by Michelle Godwin. So you're spoiled for choice. It all depends on your career trajectory and the class that you want to choose. And I think for me, my advice would be choose classes that advance your trajectory and your career, because you'll have a good experience to either write or explore more academic learning around the issues. But I have seen, circling back to your last question, I have seen other people in other programs who have come with their families and have managed. I occasionally see children in a creche being guided around at the school. I do not know what the facilities are, but something goes on with those who have children and they're taken care of. But again, to be very realistic, it's not cheap to have children in the US and take care of them. It comes at a cost. So you really have to think through that as you're making the decision. Maria, I hope that has answered your question, but Gabby may have more insights of this.
Yeah, I dragged my fiance from Florida to DC. It was a little easier to do because his job requires him to travel. So it didn't really matter where he was traveling from, and then otherwise he'd be remote. But before that, he was in a job that I can see that would have been, there would have been difficulties with that. So that's definitely a conversation you want to have with your partners, you know, about, you know, how flexible can your job be? You know, I know there's time zone differences. Luckily, Florida's in the same time zone as DC, but I have, well, an LLM peer whose fiance works out of California and works with the 3-hour time difference out of California. So that's just a conversation you need to have. But also knowing that this is very temporary, the program's very short. It's like 9 months, 8 months, you know, max. So, you know, it's a temporary change. I know some programs are a little longer. So that would be just a conversation to have in advance with your significant others, your family members about moving.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're receiving a lot of questions now. There's one in particular I want to share. Maybe Luis, you can answer this one. How do you all develop the family-like kind of this community atmosphere that you were all speaking about throughout this webinar?
Yeah, honestly, in my experience, I think it was sort of like a natural thing, right? We naturally sort of like gravitated towards each other, and even we have like a chat group, and we meet each other outside campus, you know, pretty frequently. And that helps develop the relationships that are then translated into collaboration in the classrooms. It also helps that there is a diversity in terms of like career you know, stages. We have people that are in the middle of their career, some people that are very advanced, and some people that are just starting their legal careers in the program. And so that helps you know, inform each other about, you know, what people can do in the next path and things like that. And also, I will quote Professor Monahan, one of the professors that I took last semester in the class of Global Health Law with Professor Boscia, which is that, you know, there are courses, there are classrooms where we are in this program that we'll never see again in our lives, because everyone there, even though people have different backgrounds and different interests for, you know, and career goals, everyone in this classroom believes that the right to health and health policies are massively important, right? And so that facilitates creating a like-minded community, a collaboration community that eventually becomes a family like we currently have.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing your time and experiences with us today. We are running out of time, and I'm very grateful to have had the chance to learn from you and more about your experiences. Before we wrap up, I want to mention that we will be hosting a similar session in 2 weeks on May 11th with alumni from our program that will share their career journeys after they graduated from the LLM program, and we'll explore how the program impacted their lives. So keep an eye out for the announcement, and please register to attend. To our audience today, if you have any further questions or would like to learn more about the Health Law LL.M program at Georgetown, please visit our website or reach out to me or our admissions office. I just left my email address here in the chat for those purposes. So thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you soon at Georgetown Law. Thank you.